Okay, so here is Max Lamb. Hi, Max.
Hello.
So can you just, for the listeners, just quickly explain who you are and what you do and what you're doing these days?
Yes. So I'm a furniture designer primarily, but I pretty much design anything and everything. I'm also a maker, which I think is quite an important kind of part of my practice. Behind me actually is my workshop. Um, so not only am I designing in my office, but I'm also making what I design. As a common practice at least, and my workshop is a really important part of my practice, and I'm here in my studio right now, which is in North London, and I am 39 years old. I'm turning 40 this year, and which is a big moment to a lot of people, but not to me. Yeah, my practice has been going for about 15 years. Studied at the Royal College of Art, before that Newcastle University, and very happy to have opportunities to work both in Japan and with Japanese companies.
Mm-hmm. And you have a very big project going on, I heard.
Yeah, so I'm pointing at my little workshop behind me. It's about 30 square meters, but I'm actually currently building a new workshop, which is going to be in the region of, well, the whole building is 150 square meters, but that will include a kitchen and design studio and storage, and also a 100 square meter workshop. And it's also going to be a new home kind of next door to that as well. It's the other side of London, northwest London rather than northeast. So it's called Harrow, and yeah, it's a big, very, very big project, working with architects, but taking a lot of the kind of design based decisions myself. And it's something I've been working towards for a very, very long time. And I think it's because of the nature of my work being very physical and hands-on that I unfortunately need to kind of grow in space, not because I'm employing lots of people in my design offices growing, but because my work grows. And then obviously the other interesting thing about like our current work environment and the way that I've been used to working since I started my practice is that I've always lived in the same building that I've worked. So actually, if I turn my screen, you can see the staircase there just behind me. The staircase is home. Up there is one bedroom and a kitchen, dining room, bathroom, and that's where I live with my wife Gemma and my 3.5-year-old son Ivo. And directly behind me is my workshop, and I'm sitting in what is my little sort of design office, and also the entrance to our building. And so we've been here for about 7 or 8 years, and before that I was in Tottenham for 8 years, again living and working in the same building, in an old industrial building. So this is kind of very much sort of all I've known as a way of life since I started in the design industry. And actually, quite fascinatingly, there's interesting to me at least, is the fact that whenever I have traveled to Japan, which has been on many occasions, I've been quite amazed and impressed at how many people live and work in the same building, and how much productivity comes out of some very small spaces and spaces that are very multifunctional. And I really respect that way of living. I embody that here, like in my way of life.
It's very convenient in a pandemic too. Like,
yeah, there's been no stopping. Even when I've had less things to do, I've had the opportunity to make things up, and there's been no excuses for stopping. So I've just carried on throughout and worked as hard as I ever have done.
Yeah. Okay. And want to talk a bit about your project for Tajimi Custom Tiles. Maybe you can just explain a little bit about that project, like how it came about and what is it to you, and yeah.
Well, this guy called David sent me an email introducing me to this Japanese tile manufacturer in Gifu Prefecture, in a little city called Tajimi, a few years ago, and asked if I'd be interested in working with them and maybe designing some tiles as a showcase for this new company, who were interested in making their skill set and knowledge set and access to the tile industry as a whole available to architects and designers for production of custom tiles, because so much of what I do is customized and customizable or very kind of bespoke. It's a service that I provide in my practice, and it was something that I had never really heard of in at least kind of larger scale tile industries. I know pottery studios in the UK at least that make tiles on a very bespoke nature, but they're very artisanal and visibly handmade. Yeah, I was really interested in the scalability of what Tajimi Custom Tiles were offering as a service, and was really excited to accept the invitation and explore the possibilities.
I was really surprised actually then I find out that you never made tiles before, right? I don't know if that's correct, but
yeah, I never made tiles. I've worked very little actually in clay, despite it being one of my favorite materials. And I'm actually a big collector of ceramics, but more in pottery or domestic ware. Like as an example, actually, this is not contrived. I've got my tea. I'm drinking my morning tea in this. This is a Bernard Leach mug. Well, from the Leach Pottery in St Ives, Cornwall. And I grew up in Cornwall. That's where I was born and raised. And Cornwall is famous for its ceramic industry. Well, pottery industry, let's say. And potters, the world of potters, people who make pots by hand on the wheel. And I've with my wife we've been big fans of pottery, partly because we're also big fans of food and eating, and that link between design and objects and the enjoyment of food and nourishment. So I've definitely been a big fan of ceramics and learned as much as I could possibly learn without having any really major projects within the material. I think actually I remember when we visited some of the factories in Tajimi, that the people were quite not amazed, but maybe a little bit surprised that I had some of the technical knowledge about ceramics and the sort of the chemistry of ceramics that I did. And I think it's because whenever I get interested in a material, which is basically my practice, basically my work is to get interested in a material and investigate it. I really do throw myself into a material and try to learn as much about it as possible, both in a hands-on physical way, but also in a technical, theoretical way.
Yeah, because I saw the owner of the company that produced the TCT was really impressed when with all your like very detailed questions.
Yeah, I'm annoying to a lot of people. I ask too many questions, but yeah, it's because I need to know. I need to know these things. But I also really enjoy working with people who also know the answers to the question that I have, and I really have the time and willingness to share that information. Yeah. Which often isn't the case, actually. You know, like often when I visit factories, whether it's an injection molding factory or a foundry, or you know, you ask these questions. You ask questions about their materials and their processes, and maybe they take it for granted, therefore don't really even know how to communicate the nuances of what they do, or they're not interested in sharing it, or it's just a job to them, or they don't believe that anybody would be interested. But you know, I do often get pushback on some of the questions that I work, and those relationships don't often prosper. They don't often kind of result in really excellent projects. That's probably something that must be quite satisfying in when working in Japan. There are many craftsmen who really know what they're doing, like, and less like just producing something, but really like having been made something for their whole life and know everything about it. Yes, I mean, I've worked a lot with the Urushi craftsmen in Wajima in the west coast of Japan, and I've been there 3 or 4 times and spent quite a lot of time with them, and it's amazing at just how invested they are in their work, and it is a life, a lifestyle, a livelihood, a real passion. And it's not like they don't know anything else, but it's all it's like total specificity. And I have absolute respect for that level of attention and focus and specificity. And I'm dedicated to my work, but my work is very, very broad. But I really, really thoroughly enjoy, they're the best possible kind of collaborations and relationships where I'm working with somebody who has dedicated their lives to a single skill or trade or material.
That was maybe a bit different with the project in Tajimi. You had only, I think, 4 days in Tajimi.
Was it only 4 days? We did so much in those 4 days.
Yeah, you had a whole tour like through like a couple of museums with a Kazakh in the beginning. But then actually we didn't have so much time at the actual factory that in the end made your tiles. I remember.
Yeah, well, my memory fails me. You know, this is kind of the problem, because I do so much, and like it was such an intense experience and visited so many different places. And that was the only place where we weren't allowed to take photographs. And for me, like a photographic record is one of the only ways that I can remember sometimes, because things, you know, like I try and retain it all in my brain, but I can't always. And unfortunately, the process that I chose to use, and the company that I chose to work with for the design that I created, I didn't have any evidence of my visit there, or kind of reference material to remind myself of the details of the process.
And I think you mentioned that it was quite unusual for you how the way you came up with the project. Maybe you can like rephrase it, but I think you basically went home after the meeting, and the next morning you showed up with a couple of sketches, and that was basically what we did, right?
Yeah, sometimes it can happen where an idea just comes. The design or the concept for my tiles came about through a number of different parameters for the project. Initially, there wasn't necessarily a future in the tiles as a product in their own right. There wasn't necessarily going to be a product that we sell, and we still don't really know exactly, you know, how you know, these are going to sort of manifest themselves whether as a product or as a showcase exclusively. But certainly initially we were looking at presenting ideas and designs in Milan during the Salone dei Mobili, and as an exhibition piece. So we're kind of like talking about the project being a showcase for what the company can offer as customized products, specific for a project, a piece of architecture, a building, an interior. And yet the idea of showcasing something that will never, it's almost like trying to show the potential of a company without necessarily committing to a single product, and without trying to pigeonhole or be too prescriptive or final or finite about what that company can do and what the possibilities are. It's a very, very kind of challenging idea, really. And there was myself and another designer, Kwango Lee, who was also tasked with the same responsibility. And so it was like between the two of us, we had to come up with designs that kind of demonstrated and celebrated the potential as much as possible. And yet we're talking about something that's suited for or designed for use within architecture and for architecture as a construction material. Yet our first platform was going to be a furniture fair. And so it was kind of quite a sort of a challenging brief, really. And I kind of immediately thought, because I'm quite sort of economical in my way of thinking and efficient in my way of thinking, and for me, I never liked sort of the idea of investing loads of time and money and energy into something that is very ephemeral, and I really wanted there to be a permanence to it. And so the basic kind of seed of the idea was to make furniture out of tiles that would offer and show or demonstrate the possibility of the application in the use of architecture or within architecture. So this idea of a piece of furniture being a three-dimensional object, yet a wall classically, let's say sort of archetypally or typically as archetypically, if that's a word, as a two-dimensional surface. And I had to find a way of making a tile that would kind of like serve both purposes and translate into both formats. So a three-dimensional tile was the basic idea.
Yeah, I mean, that was I think it worked amazingly well, and it was like, yeah, pretty much exactly what we needed. Like at a furniture fair, we cannot like just put tiles on a wall for a week, but we have to put an object into a space.
Yeah,
and then also a bit my like personal thought that I had that tiles are like a bit like just degraded as like wall covering or wall decoration, but actually they're like part of the architecture, and the way you detach the tiles from the walls kind of also allow another perspective on tiles in general, I thought.
Well, yeah, there was this kind of moment in my mind where I was like visualizing it was a scale. It was a question of scale. That was kind of really what it was. And so like looking at a piece of furniture as a three-dimensional object within a room, and you're always seeing the outside surface. But then thinking about a piece of architecture and being within a piece of architecture, which is almost like a big piece of furniture, but you're within it rather than out with it. And so the idea of kind of reversing that, so taking the interior of a room and then inverting it so the inside faces of the wall become the outside faces of the wall, and scaling it down. And suddenly I had this quite dynamic relationship between a building and a piece of architecture and standing within it, and an object that sits within a room. And that was kind of really how I was able to sort of like take this tile off the wall and turn it into a piece of furniture, and vice versa, take the tiles off, or the surface skin off the furniture, and then place it onto a wall. And I actually realized it was quite an easy kind of shift, or an easy transition, if the detail in the tile is right. But what it meant was that I couldn't just design one tile, because one tile wouldn't serve all purposes. It required this like family or little collection of tiles in order to meet all the different possibilities. So for example, where a floor meets a wall, you end up with this transition of a horizontal to a vertical face, and there needs to be a transition equally where three walls meet into a corner, so a horizontal, a vertical, and then another vertical at 90 degrees, and you end up with three planes kind of converging, and that needed another detail, another tile that fit that spot. Yeah, we now have a little family of tiles.
Yeah, like when I saw this first sketch, I thought it was very, very convincing from the beginning. But I was like, how are they going are they ever going to build this? Like,
oh my God.
like, I mean, it's these like neat lines that go around the whole objects, and but I remember that Kazasan, the owner, was like, yeah, we're gonna build this, and yeah, they did. 1 year later than expected, but they made it, and it looks pretty amazing.
But I think that's that's one of the beauties of Kazai-san, and the whole project really is just the sort of the open-mindedness, especially somebody, I think you, just before we started filming, you mentioned that he, Kazai-san, is sort of hoping to retire in a few years' time. Wanting to, at least. Whether or not he ever will, he strikes me as the sort of person that won't ever retire. But the fact that he's kind of nearing that position, that time, thinking of retiring, yet still so open-minded and excited to experiment and try new things. Just the fact that he's founding this company at this point, like a new arm of his, or a new company that demonstrates a real desire and passion for trying new things and experimenting, and yeah, it couldn't really ask for a better collaborator.
That's nice of you to say. And so, what do you have in mind for these objects? Like, we have like a little series of beautiful objects, from the smallest one I think is a ball, and then the biggest one is like a big wall, like something like 600 kilograms.
Yeah,
And
architecture isn't light. I mean,
and you can expect.
let's face it. Yeah,
expect it.
architecture isn't light. And we are, I mean, it's an interesting conundrum because so often building materials are not designed to be light. They often work best as very heavy masses of material. And you know, there's scale limitations when you go very, very thin, and durability potentially, and structural limitations as well. I wouldn't even say unfortunately, but naturally, the pieces that I design, the furniture, are heavy. But like I say, naturally so, and that's not a problem. And I don't think that's unprecedented. I'm quite, I think I'm quite kind of renowned for making immovable furniture, even if it looks quite small and compact. Trying to find a little model of a chair, but you know, like this is. Well, this is a little model of a chair, which is a little example or little test of a chair that I eventually made out of a billet of steel, forged steel, and it's absolutely solid. And I think it probably weighs about 700 kilograms, 800 kilograms. And equally, like the work that I so frequently do in stone, it's quite difficult to make stone light. And I'm not apologetic about it. It is what it is, as the saying goes. But also bearing in mind that the products that I designed aren't really the product. The product is the tile. The pieces of furniture that I designed are really just sort of vehicles, canvases to display the possibilities of the tiles.
Exactly. We have like these two layers. We have the tiles as a product, and then we have the pieces, who are like pieces of furniture or pieces of art that they can have their own clients and their own way of showing it. I think we probably continue to work this way and have one-off pieces, maybe or small series that can be shown in galleries or sold through galleries, and then the products.
Absolutely. It's one of the beauties of a tile, in a way, is that it is infinitely tileable. Yeah. It's a tileable object and scalable. So there's no limitation really as to what can be built using these tiles. It's a building brick. It's like a brick. You know, you take a brick, you can build pretty much any building using a brick. Yeah, and that's the beauty of a tile too. So although I've designed a series of furniture and smaller objects using the tiles that will fit within the confines of the exhibition space when we first present them, the possibilities are really endless. And at this point, I wouldn't want to commit to never making more, nor do I want to commit to making an unlimited kind of series. It's really sort of as the inquiries see fit and as the possibilities see fit, we can scale accordingly. Yeah. And I quite like the idea that I've actually kind of designed my own brick that I can actually use for my own projects, and because I'm a furniture maker, really. I mean, that's sort of how I see myself, and the enjoyment I get is through building furniture and giving furniture to people to use. And I'm not an architect, so when it comes to architecture, it really requires an architect to know how to apply one of my products. So yeah, I'm quite excited to see how the project evolves and manifests itself.
Yeah. Yeah, when I talked with Salon 94, who is representing you, they also, like, I didn't think about it too much before, but it's also very, very interesting that you can use them indoors and outdoors, and you can obviously we can furnish a square in a city with these objects.
That's true, and it's actually a fairly kind of ongoing theme, or the challenge is an ongoing theme in my work, where quite a lot of people want to be able to use furniture outdoors, and I get numerous inquiries for outdoor furniture, and I have very little furniture that is really suitable for outdoor use. Outdoor environment, in the elements, under the sun, under the rain, under the snow, under the ice, it's like very, very extreme conditions, and there aren't very many materials that will survive or last or just generally be suitable for outdoor use, yet high-fired, vitrified clay, ceramic, this stuff, like, it is kind of absolutely perfect for use outdoors and equally indoors, and that's a really exciting prospect. I just remembered I had this kind of little bag of goodies, basically my project in miniature Japanese format, and these are the little kind of like sample tiles that these what Kazai-san gave to me on the last day, and I'd only seen them in these sort of vintage Japanese mosaic boxes, because one of the things that Kazai-san and his kind of previous company, I don't know how we kind of describe it. It's an existing company, but his kind of main parent, mother company, produce are mosaics, and they're the sort of company that, one of the few companies that really specialize in very, very kind of highly detailed work, including that of laying mosaic tiles. And so I was one day flicking through all of these vintage tile catalogs that Kazai-san had, saw all the amazing detail work, often all kind of architecture, but interior architecture typically, where swimming pools and restaurants and kitchen surfaces all being kind of made using mosaic tiles. And the fact that the shapes were so smooth and organic, because by taking a tile and scaling it down to a very small scale, they can kind of wrap them over very sort of undulating, smooth surface, smooth objects. That was kind of a fairly key moment as well in the project, thinking, this is such like a beautiful little product that can achieve so much in terms of soft shape, even if the material itself isn't physically soft, it allows for these soft organic forms. And I really, really like that. And I just kind of thought, well, is it possible to scale that up, to be able to make kind of bigger objects, but using fewer components? And so these little components, which are very standard sort of classic mosaic tiles, still commonly used in Japan, not so common elsewhere, but definitely in Japan, it's a real sort of very kind of much identify the sort of a Japanese product. So I've just made the sort of like the monster version, almost exactly to scale. So we have a 20 millimeter thick slab of stoneware tile. But what's amazing is that also as if I take these off, they almost become like little objects in their own right.
They do. I mentioned it, right? We made a little pop-up shop in February in a department store in Omotesando in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And they only had a very few of your tiles at that point, and I think like 2 each or something. And they were sold in like 20 minutes or something. I mean, obviously they were like,
and as what? Who knows? They're like little curios.
But
even this is a tile as a pot stand, as a poster,
It is a very nice object, just like that. Even
very, very nice. Yeah.
Do you still have other projects in Japan? And like, are you gonna come back to Japan anytime soon? I mean, it's a bit.
I'd love to come. Yeah, I'd love to come back to Tajimi at some point. Since maybe 2008, I've had this like real kind of longing to spend a fairly significant time in Japan. A sort of residency, almost like a residential project, where I come and live with a potter, and I would really like to kind of turn my hand to the hand making of pottery. Or clay objects, and it's never happened. I haven't pushed really hard for it to happen. That's sort of a little bit of a dream project that I'd like to do, to come and live in a village of potters, and either work with a potter or kind of really immerse myself into kind of their way of life in order to turn it into a project, without any real kind of like knowledge or direction of what the outcome may be, but just to kind of dedicate myself to fairly significant period of time, not a lifetime, but a period of time to honing a skill and learning the trade, but also understanding the digging of the clay and the processing of the clay and the sort of the maturation project process that clay needs to go through before it becomes like really good to work with. And of course the firing, in an anagama kiln, maybe kind of this sort of 30-hour or 3-day or 4-day firing process, and to sort of like be part of a community to be able to do that. It's a process that I really respect and admire and would like to both contribute but also learn. But in terms of like existing projects, still very much working with the craftsmen in Wajima, and I'm really grateful that the works that I have produced in Urushi lacquer have been received so well, and people continue to commission me to make them, and that means I'm commissioning the community in Wajima to make them for me, and I'm working with them, and I'm really happy that relationship has prospered, and I've been able to continue to give them work, because they were so generous the first couple of times that I went and spent time with them, 2 weeks at a time. They really sort of gave themselves to me and kind of opened their doors. So I'm really happy that that work has been successful, and we continue to make more and continue to experiment with it too. Like I'm in direct communication with them, and they are always kind of interested to experiment with different carving techniques. Even like I'll do demonstrations of a carving technique that I do here, and like, can you do this on the surface of a bench? And they will then have a go. They'll use their tools versus my tools. They'll have a slightly different technique for doing, but they can achieve very similar, and that's a really enjoyable way of working remotely.
I hope we can do that in Tajimi too, with these objects. It's only just starting. Like, it's been 2 years since you were there, but I hope we can really continue to build these objects.
Yeah, so do I. I mean, that's always the hope. There's always kind of so much energy and enthusiasm and goodwill. Like, we always have kind of so much hope when we go into these projects. And of course, we always hope that they turn into something kind of really prosperous for everybody and long term, and not this sort of transient, fleeting kind of idea, or nothing that we do is whimsical. We try at least, but for some reason not everything always takes off or captures the attention or imagination of people. So yeah, fingers crossed. There's a real kind of life to these pieces, and we can continue to find platforms for them, homes, people.
Hopefully also at Art Basel next year, if everything goes well.
Right, yeah, as another platform. Yeah, absolutely.
But the next thing is your bathroom, anyway, your new home.
Bathroom, yeah, okay. So it's funny, I'm my first customer. Which interestingly, the last, I've only ever designed tiles once before, and those were the marmoreal, the terrazzo tiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was back in 2014, and again, I was the guinea pig. I'm what's the expression? I put my money where my mouth is. Like, if I'm going to create something, I want to be the first guinea pig, or the first test, the first person to test it. And so my bathroom upstairs actually is clad in this crazy terrazzo, overscale terrazzo tile, which was the first prototype block. And my new bathroom in the workshop in Harrow that we're building now is going to be entirely sort of lined, encapsulated in these pastely pink Tajimi Custom Tiles designed by me. So it's going to be really exciting to see that.
Great. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time,
David. Thank you.
See you soon.
Yeah, we'll see you where will we see you? Maybe I'll be allowed to come to Tokyo in November.
Yeah, exactly. If you could make it to the exhibition, that'd be amazing. Guangzhou, it's not too far, so you'll probably come.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good day. Keep in
We'll
touch.
speak soon.
Bye, Max.
See you, David. Bye-bye.